teachers, what's the darkest thing you've seen from a student? I was student teaching when I was 21. I had a class of high school seniors. One boy was caught telling his friend he planned to rape me in my car. I ended up getting transferred about 2 months into my student teaching experience. I've been assaulted before, so it felt even worse. That can be terrifying to hear. Glad nothing came of it. Thank you. I teach younger kids now, and I love them dearly. Had a student in my class as a sophomore. Every morning her junior year she would come in and chat in the morning. One day out of the blue it stopped. In fact, she wasn't at school at all anymore. Fast forward 3 months. She shows up and looks broken. I ask her what's going on. After quite a bit of hesitation, she tells me that she went to a party and was DD. No alcohol in her system. However, she woke up the next morning and couldn't remember a thing about the previous night. A couple weeks later, she finds out she is pregnant. She was a virgin before that night. Roofied and raped. She had only told her counselor and now me. I haven't had a chance to talk to her due to COVID. Her outlook and demeanor was night and day before and after that party. Poor baby. She'll never be the same. Student would hide in the bushes trying to get me a female teacher's feet. Had to advise staff to wear closed-toe sandals/shoes because he was so interested. Discovered he was drawing women with their feet cut off as well as drawing severed feet in high heels. Out of curiosity, how old was this guy? 13. Not a teacher, but when I was in 5th grade my school had a buddy system. Since I was the oldest out of 7 kids, I grew up learning how to take care of troublesome kids. The buddy system went like this. A 5th grader would be assigned a kindergartner. The 2 classes met every Wednesday and did arts and crafts together. Since my teacher saw I was strict with kids and knew how to take care and be responsible with kids, I was put with the most problematic kid. This kid misbehaved a lot, and I got him to become a lot better and didn't think much of it until one day this happened. We were helping the kids cut things out, and they gave us big kids real scissors. I had turned around for just a little to ask my classmate what the next step was when I felt a very sharp pain on my arm. When I turned around I saw that this little kid had cut me. Not a big cut, but still. I didn't yell, but I asked him why he did that. He then told me that that is what his mom did to him, and that it was just tougher love. It turns out that this kid had been abused and cut by his mother so much he thought that it was love. It was rough. Another story, if at this point you can't tell. My elementary was in a very ghetto area. In 3rd grade I sat next to this very quiet kid. He never talked to me for a few weeks, until one day he said he wanted to kill me. I told my teacher, but the teacher did nothing. No talking to the student, no being benched, nothing. He went from I want to kill you to more detailed threats. I want to rip you apart. You're so ugly you should never been in this world. I hate you are a few examples. Eventually my teacher did one thing, moved me 1 seat away. For some reason the kid kept threatening me. For clarification, I had never met this kid before. Never talked to him. Never touched him. I did nothing to him. One day, this kid brought broken glass to school and tried to cut me. He was caught and expelled. I never knew why he hated me and still haven't figured it out. I'm not a teacher, but I had an off hour in high school and I usually would use it for going home or just hanging out. I was asked by my film photography teacher if I could help with teaching by showing some of my examples and helping mostly 9th graders. I was in 11th grade at the time. I noticed one kid was really quiet and socially awkward, but he had really good prints. And after a couple days I noticed a lot of film was missing, and so I asked my teacher. He said that the quiet kid paid for some extra film to take home and use. I brushed it off for a while until it came to show some of the prints to the class. The quiet kid was 3rd up and I was over near his desk and I noticed some of the pictures he printed. It was 2 people who turned out to be his mother and father on the floor with what I can assume a large quantity of drugs and alcohol. Most of the photos were of his living situation. It was one of the saddest things I've seen. He was a bright and happy person. I got in contact with him a couple months ago and he's living with his grandparents after his mom and dad got into a fight of money. He now shoots a lot of nature photography. It's good that you reached out, and it sounds like, hopefully, his situation has changed for the better. I was working at an after-school program as a director, site manager, and one of my employees radioed me needing my immediate assistance at the playground. I raced out there. The employees pulled me aside and said that I needed to look at Lil Billy's back. Since it was dark outside, she couldn't tell if it was scratch marks or burns. She said she had put in timeout, standing against the basketball pole, and he was trying to lean up against it, but kept making weird spastic moves every time he leaned against it. So she asked to look at his back. After he said it hurt, I asked Lil Billy to follow me to the nurse's office. Leaving the door open, the school staff was all gone, but there are cameras everywhere, and just in case I didn't want anyone thinking I was doing something inappropriate with the kid, since I had no idea what I was about to see and or hear, it took everything in my power to not audibly gasp once I lifted the back of his shirt. I counted at least 7 belt loop bruises and 5 lash marks. I asked where he got them from, to which he replied, "My dad." I got a bad grade. This kid got beat with both ends of a belt because he got a P in conduct. I ended up asking his permission to take pictures, and I immediately called CPS. When I showed up to work the next day at 2 p.m, City and the ISD police were there. I found out from the CPS person that the woman listed as his mom was the dad's GF, and she knew the beatings were going on, and that this apparently wasn't the first time. CPS and the city police refused to let the GF or dad see him. Good. Mom lived in a neighboring town, so they removed him immediately and sent him there. That's the last I heard of anything. I'm not a teacher. Something like that happened at the special needs school in the UK I went to in my early teens. A friend found the kid a year below mine was covered in bruises. I found out from the head teacher that he was put into care. No one wanted to adopt him. This was in the 1990s, and I wonder how life turned out for him. A student during holiday break a few years back murdered her mother and her mother's boyfriend brutally with the help of her own boyfriend. Then the bodies laid in the apartment as she left, and eventually went to a New Year's party days later. Eventually she was arrested along with her boyfriend. Chilling to think she was sitting in my classroom days before, probably with this whole plan in her head. I'm an English teacher, and I'm the sponsor of the school's comic book and anime club. This year, I managed to take my club to a convention, and many of them had several firsts, such as meeting celebrities, LARPing, participating in panels, speaking to professional artists, and just being with a larger fandom community. Upon our return, one of my members, a 16-year-old girl, asked to speak to me privately. She proceeded to tell me that she had been molested by her father and uncle ever since she was 12. On her 16th birthday, she finally had enough of the abuse, and she contacted the police and told them everything. Before the investigation could begin, her uncle committed suicide out of shame. Her father was about to do the same, but she was able to convince him not to do it. He is now facing trial for his crimes. She then thanked me and said that the 2 days we spent at the convention were the happiest days of her life, and it allowed her to feel like a child for the first time in 4 years. It was the proudest moment of my career. First paragraph made me forget what was inevitably coming in the second paragraph. Same. I was starting to settle in for a fun story for some reason. I didn't see it, but I heard it. I used to work at a shelter for at-risk girls aged 8 to 18. Mainly truancy or runaway cases, but some were taken from homes of abuse, drugs, sex trafficking, etc. We housed and looked after roughly 20 girls at a time when we were at full capacity. Many of them had a lot of mental and emotional issues. One of our youngest girls at the time, around age 9, was talking to an older girl, around 13. Teen was nonchalantly talking about how she was raped as a young girl before she came to the shelter. Next thing I knew, at least 10 other girls who had overheard the conversation started talking about how old they were when they were raped. Some rattled off multiple ages and times when it occurred, just causally. It was chilling to hear so many young girls tell their tales. Speaking from experience, it's easier to repeat those stories as a narrator instead of a participant. Disconnecting emotions during retells helps prevent any flashbacks from feeling the memory versus reciting the memory, especially for young girls, since they usually have to repeat the stories over and over for the courts or the social workers or the therapists. So it just becomes this deadpan matter-of-fact tone. Still just awful that anyone ever has to go through this shit. Sexual predators that go after children should be put in jail or some kind of group house for life. Unfortunately, mine never even saw the inside of a jail cell. Thank you for your work with these girls at that shelter. I can't imagine that was easy to see, hear, or handle day in and day out. But it's super important work. My mom was a school nurse and always came home with some crazy stories. One of the most blood-curdling things she has was a girl that was really into cutting to the point where she had a scar that covered the majority of the outside of her bicep. The girl one day decided that she hated her scar and wanted to get rid of it at home by herself. She decided she was going to get rid of them in her bathroom. She took a knife to her arm, cutting a 4x6 piece of scar tissue that was just under an inch thick out of her arm. She then proceeded to stitch it up using a needle and thread and bandage it with gauze all by herself. She then woke up and went to school the next day so she could go to my mom's office and ask if it looked infected. It was. After scrolling through this thread barely blinking for close to an hour, this shit made me stare into the distance. Incredibly disturbing. How you could do that to yourself without passing out. Some people have very high levels of determination and will paired with a high pain tolerance. My partner is like this. They have scars on their shoulder, wrists, and thighs. Nothing like the story, but the two on the shoulder are from holding a hot pan to the flesh for at least 10 seconds. It's a lot of stuff they are dealing with, and we have been working on it together and with a therapist. People like this are definitely real. They just need to be shown big love, and in ways that they know the love is without borders or conditions. Not my student. Hez from the class next door. When I was student teaching, this child had a confusing home life. Apparently he was adopted by a family member, but it's unclear what happened to his biological parents. Anyway, he goes through these intense mood swings. Multiple times throughout the year he would pull the fire alarm and made a break for the school's parking lot at one moment, and then deeply apologetic another moment, as if he wasn't in control of himself just an hour ago. During his outbursts he would occasionally attempt to enter a room, and when he found that he couldn't, he would bang the door and scream at the top of his lungs, as if it's a zombie movie. And yes, this is all while instruction is happening. He would literally escape the classroom in the middle of a lesson. He has caused lockdowns. As it turns out, this child is suicidal, and his actions might or might not be self-harming in a sense, since he knows these behaviors would earn him a punishment. Apparently, at home, has been reported to jump out of a moving car. Later in the year he also told his teacher and para that he wants to die. His class was awesome though. His teacher had the whole class write a note to the kid, and they all wrote such sweet encouraging notes that teacher then made a collage and gave it to him as a gift. After his outburst episodes, when he comes back apologizing, the whole class would give him a group hug. At one point all his teachers talked to him after one of his episodes, basically saying how they have such high expectations for him, how far he has come, and how much further he will go. My mentor teacher attended this talk. She cried after. I imagine I would too. Sometimes there is a comical side to this situation, though. One day as I was teaching science, I saw the principal chasing this kid down the road through the window, somehow wielding a long stick, as if he's about to shepherd him back to his pen. And I had to just keep teaching and act like I didn't see anything. It was a rough student teaching year. I had stories in my room too, but damn did I learn a lot. I'm so glad the class and faculty were so supportive. I'm sure it helped that kid a lot. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.